Okay, so I'm from RR City in Bristol. Thanks very much for having me along to talk to you. Wasn't quite sure exactly kind of what area you wanted to talk about. So what I thought I'd do is do a kind of like brief overview of who we are, what we've done, and then kind of give lots of time for kind of questions at the end if you kind of wanted to see more about particular areas. So yeah, who we are, our makeup and strategy. We're a protest coalition campaigning for clean air in Bristol. So we're made up of lots of different community environmental groups in Bristol, in sort of representing a whole range of different diverse communities, including African Voices Forum, Black and Green Ambassadors. I don't know if you know them. They're a kind of group brought together by Eugenia Radio in Bristol that have kind of reps to get Black and ethnic minority communities involved in green issues within Bristol. Bristol Disability Equality Forum, which I also work for, Bristol Youth Right for Climate, Cotton Garden School, Eastside Community Trust, which is like an area trust, Extinction Rebellion, Bristol and Youth, MedAct, which is a medical campaign group, Stop the Magnesi, and Sustainable South Mead, which is again a sort of community area specific group. For context, for those who don't know about the air pollution issue in Bristol, it's particularly bad in our city. This kind of comes from traffic pollution and also to a certain extent from wood burning stoves. I guess Bristol has quite tight streets which tend to have a lot of congestion, which is not great for air quality. The kind of air sort of pollution tends to gather in the bowl of the city, leads to 300 deaths a year in Bristol, includes a whole ream of sort of health and medical conditions. And we kind of consider it basically a crisis not only of health but of social justice, in terms of a lot of the people who are impacted are from the communities that essentially are the ones that aren't producing this. So disabled people, Black and ethnic minority people, working class people. And also, of course, it's really bad for the environment, both in terms of other species having health issues, but also kind of contributions to climate change in various kind of indirect ways. They always talk about air pollution as being like the opposite side of the same coin of sort of climate change. It's sort of like the human angle of it. In a sense, where we figured we should come in as a campaign group is that this is not an issue that hasn't been talked about for a long time. There's been people who've done various campaigns, short campaigns over time, and there's some brilliant groups like the Bristol Clean Air Alliance. But essentially what we felt is, in a sense, if we wanted to kind of drive real change, what we need to do is come together as all these different Bristol communities and say, hey, this is enough. The people of Bristol are saying to those in power, you are supposed to be responsible for us. You're supposed to take care of us, and yet you're just ignoring us as we kind of die and suffer to a great extent. So we are kind of trying to bring together communities in Bristol to shout loud on that front. And we have several what we call campaign needs. So like our objectives, we want clean air now. When we say now, like we're asking for WHO regulation air quality by May 2022, which would be a year after the new mayor had come in. Well, he's not new, but when we were kind of planning the campaign, it was a possibility that it would be a new mayor. We want just implementation, so we want all of the needs of the different communities in Bristol to be considered through whatever solution is implemented. So I think this is a kind of issue which is so wound up with so many different social issues. You can't just kind of like you can't just like ban cars or something. Then that would mean that, for example, a whole load of disabled people wouldn't be able to sort of access the centre or that kind of thing. We want it to be a fully thought out and just solution. And we also want the council and local press and all of the bodies involved to tell the truth about the issue. Like, this is not, they're not shouting to the rooftops that they're letting 300 people a year die. So some of the work we've been doing is around that kind of issue of like trying to, spread it large, the kind of raw facts of it. And we're also acting on all sources of air pollution in Bristol. So that's including, for example, the particulates from wood stoves as well as the traffic. We see it as like a broad issue. And I know that certainly down in your area, I guess air pollution again is probably coming from different factors as well. As in Bristol, we don't have to think so much about air pollution from agriculture, but again, that's another big source in many areas. So we're acting as concerned citizens, not experts with solutions. And our targets are Bristol City Council and also the West of England Combined Authority, which is the regional council, which sort of covers a whole bunch of different areas around Bristol and has quite a lot of the transport budget. So we have to include within the campaign also transport service providers and businesses who have an impact on air quality. I know, for example, there's been a few kind of supermarket groups which were putting pressure on local councils and government not to take action on air pollution. So there are some kind of quite bad actor businesses around that need to be included in this kind of campaign. So what have we done so far? We have done a lot of sort of educating and sort of actions to get into local press to try and raise the profile of the issue. So, for example, one of the things we've done, we've delivered 20,000 leaflets across the city into people's doors with this, you can see here, which had like a kind of line drawing, which kind of kids could colour in and put in their window, because obviously kids are one of the groups that are most impacted by health issues from air pollution. So it's kind of really important to get them involved in this issue. We're lucky to have the famous artist Luke Duram. I don't know if any of you remember when in Park Street they had the water slide going down it. That was Luke Duram. He was kind enough to create us a stencil for like a reverse graffiti. So what we do is we go around and we take this stencil and a pressure washer, and we basically spray off the pollution from the streets or dirty walls, and then that leaves our lung image and our logo, and the council basically can't really complain or try and get rid of it, because essentially what we're doing is cleaning their streets for them at the same time as spreading our message. So that's been quite effective. Also another big thing, as I was saying earlier, people aren't shouting from the rooftops the kind of brutal facts of it. So we decided that we would do that. So we did a crowdfunder, and we're lucky enough to get £4,000 from the public to put up basically loads and loads of billboards and big posters across the city. We were lucky enough to have a support from the advertising company Out of Hand, who, I don't know if you've noticed, there's been I don't know if it's the same in Langport. I guess you don't have many big billboards, but I guess pandemic has hit advertising quite hard, so they've been quite good at kind of supporting social justice causes by essentially giving us reduced rates for advertising and that kind of thing. So we managed to get quite a good deal on that. And we've also been doing lots of outreach and basically getting out there, talking to people, getting them to write to their mayoral candidates ahead of last May. So our vision for success is, in a sense, as I was saying earlier, bringing together Bristol communities so that we can no longer be ignored. It's kind of, I think, really important to make it clear that, like, all these communities want this change. It's not just kind of the usual sort of hippie environmentalists who have a lot of money and time to do this. It's everyone really cares about this issue. So bringing together all these different voices to say we're all impacted by this. And in the way we work as a campaigners, we think it's really important to centre the voices of the groups who are most impacted. We don't think it should be a bunch of, again, environmental groups sort of bringing on different people as tokenism. It's about trying to centre those voices and making sure that the decision making lies with them, and more seeing the time and resources of the usual green groups as being in service to those decisions rather than the other way around. And also, because a lot of the groups involved are concerned more environmentally, we see this campaign as also a way to engage people in the broader environmental issues. I'm probably from a lot of your work, I guess you're aware that there are some people who are just never going to be switched on to the climate issue. It's a bit too big and maybe a bit too scary for them. But I think a lot of those people do care about pollution. I find, like, a lot of skeptics I talk to in my work, they care about the water that they drink or the air that they breathe. So it's quite a good way of engaging a different subset of people with the broader climate issue. So just as a kind of history of like how we started the campaign in reflection of what I've just talked about, it started off initially as an Extinction Rebellion project. We were doing activism on air pollution, but realised that really we couldn't talk about the issue just as a group of people who were, I guess, largely middle class white and able-bodied. I mean, I'm personally disabled, but I guess a lot of other people in the group were coming from quite a privileged perspective. So we thought, yes, what we need to do really is to build a campaign with these other people. And instead of sort of doing an action or having a campaign and saying, oh, do you want to come along and join in? If we realised if it was going to be really equal, you have to basically build the whole thing together from the start. So we went through this big process of kind of reaching out to other people, other groups, and saying, do you want to come along? We're going to have some open forums, and this whole sort of strategy building process kind of got their input, got their thoughts, and basically built it together collaboratively. And as I was saying earlier, it's really important to censor the voices of those who are most impacted. So this is how we formed the steering group of the groups I was talking about earlier, decided that in a sense we shouldn't be giving the sort of places to the usual suspects who might have more time. It's about making sure that the people who are at the centre and have the decision-making power are those who are most impacted. And then what we've got is like a separate support group of people who kind of maybe have a bit more time, a bit more capacity, a bit more resources to basically do the legwork of the decisions that are decided by the steering group. And I guess the kind of issues that we've encountered through this is obviously you need to move at the speed of trust. It takes time to build those collaborations and that understanding between different groups, and particularly during the pandemic that sort of presented some difficulties. But I think as things are opening up now, I'm sort of really pleased at how essentially sort of that kind of trust and friendship has basically formed between these different groups. And certainly being able to meet in person and sort of having food together has really helped that. Having said that, though it's all important to proceed at the speed of trust, I think also kind of awareness that actually people don't want to spend a lot of time sort of discussing feelings, and like a lot of sometimes that kind of trust building process which we were trying to work out how to do. I think actually a lot of what builds trust and investment in the campaign is just going out and doing stuff. If you can agree to do something small and just go out to do it together, that's how you start to feel bonded as a group. But in terms of where next, we're working on our phase 2 strategy now. Our phase 1 was working towards the mayoral elections. I think since then people have been quite burnt out, and so we're trying to proceed with our stage 2 strategy at the speed at which people are able to. We're lucky in Bristol that we have quite a sort of good green representation. Sorry, a lot of green councillors on our who've been elected, which gives us quite a lot of good leverage. We've got a lot of good councillors who are asking the right questions, and I think they feel very warmly about the campaign. I've heard a few of them say that they think that our city sort of helped with that process of getting the kind of green surge in Bristol. There was an awful lot of factors there, which we're a tiny part. I think as in terms of the CASDA clean air zone failures means that we're probably going to be upping the ante as we go on, though. So it's early days to say what that looks like, and doing a lot more outreach as lockdown finishes. But I think in terms of one thing too, for us, it's important to acknowledge that in a sense, when you're doing a clean air campaign, there's never really a simple end to it. Air is never going to be entirely clean. Like even if we got a good clean air zone in, it's essentially a less dirty air zone. There's so much work to be done and so many different types of sources, but I think it can be incredibly rewarding in terms of bringing communities together as a kind of coalition that can then go on and act on other things as well. So I feel like it's a process that's well worth investing in.